We do have a bit of a treat today. It's not an RIE report out. It's a report out of applying continuous improvement thinking to how we do things, to designing stuff. So I'm going to hand it over here in a minute to Chris and Brian. They're going to talk about how they're designing a path forward on our security posture and our business technology strategy. And then after that, we're going to talk about our procurement team that designed how we should do procurement. And with that, I'll hand it over to Chris and Brian. Chris first.
All right, thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about technology stuff with no technology. Not today. So 2 weeks ago, we held a lean workshop to facilitate our planning process related to what we've been calling the business technology transformation. That was 2 weeks ago. I have difficulty remembering what I did 2 days ago, so I've captured some notes, and I may have to consult them a little bit. So back on the 31st of July, we held this event. It was a large event. There were 17 of us crammed into a fairly small room for 4 days. The team was facilitated by David and his entire group, which was awesome. It also comprised of the what we're calling the IT Executive Oversight Committee, which included Julie, Brian, Tom, Bob, Angela, and myself. We had a couple of other IT folks in the room, Eric Decker and Kevin Long. And we had a couple of other fresh eyes and participants who are familiar with lean process from the business side, including Stephanie Abram, Mary Price, and Greg Moore. So that team embarked on a couple of objectives for the week. The first one was to create a couple of roadmaps. The first roadmap would be a high-level roadmap, 3 to 5 years, more like 5, that would be well informed by the Grant Thornton IT strategy recommendations that we received in the May and June timeframe, as well as some recommendations coming out of a recent security assessment that we had done in the May and June timeframe as well. Secondly, excuse me, we wanted to produce a couple of detailed roadmaps beyond this 5-year high-level roadmap. We wanted more insights into what our roadmap looks like through 2018, not only for the business technology transformation, but also for the security risk mitigation that we would be undertaking as a result of our recent security assessment. So essentially 3 roadmaps. We used standard CI tools facilitated by David and company, including starting off with developing metrics. Metrics are pretty darn important, as we've all learned and become pretty familiar with them, because they're going to be important in guiding our process and measuring our results and our performance against our objectives. The metrics span a number of different dimensions ranging from human development, quality metrics, security metrics, as well as obviously cost metrics. I won't go into the details on those metrics, but they're all informed by not only the Grant Thornton recommendations, but also the security assessment recommendations. We developed a decision matrix to help us lay out our plans for the next couple of years, identifying what decisions do we really need to make, and in what order or sequence do we need to make them, what knowledge is required for us to make those decisions, and what are the outputs from the decisions. Using those components, we put together a pretty comprehensive decision matrix, which then led us down the road to put together a vertical value stream, which is really just a roadmap across time describing who's going to do what and when, what's going to be needed to do it, and what will be the result or the output of doing it. So a standard lean tool that we spent a fair number of hours and perhaps days on. It's downstairs in room 211. By the way, any of you are welcome to visit the room at any time and take a look at the sausage making that went on. It's still on the wall. The vertical value stream resulted in, for the business technology transformation, all of the major GT recommendations being sequenced over the course of time. Let me give you just a quick recap on a couple of them that are coming up shortly. So following the workshop in the first week of August, on August 23rd, coming up next week, we'll review with the board our business technology transformation strategy and roadmap. So that's on the plan and in development. Following that, in early September, the IT Executive Oversight Committee will spend perhaps countless hours vetting and prioritizing the IT projects for 2018. I'm hoping it's not going to be countless. We're hoping we can knock it out in a half a day, maybe. We'll see. Followed by that, we will engage in an RIE focused on the creation of the Business Technology Management Office. That RIE will be focused on standard work, value management process, and metrics related to the BTMO. If you may recall, the BTMO, Business Technology Management Office, is that new construct and group of people and process that we're putting together to drive the demand side of IT governance, to really have the business drive our needs from a technology point of view. Beyond that, we'll focus on all of the other recommendations in the GT report, including asset management and vendor management, and developing an overall industrial control system strategy. Those things will happen through through next year, 2018. Beyond that, we'll be into bigger things like transitioning our finance and HR systems to a cloud-based ERP solution. And following that, we'll be focused on transitioning our asset management solutions from our current in-house platform or platforms to also a cloud-based solution. And while we're doing that, meantime, there's a few things that are running in parallel. We'll finish the migration to our new modular data center here on campus. In fact, we should get occupancy, certificate of occupancy by the end of the month, and we'll start that transition from that point. Following that, we'll take plans to transition our alternate data center, which we have at another location. We'll transition that from our on-premise facility to a cloud-hosted service. That'll be down the road in the 2022 timeframe. As we go through the business technology transformation process, we've established a little bit of governance around it by forming two teams. I mentioned our Executive Oversight Committee, myself and Julie and Brian and Tom and Bob and Angela, and Gail and Mike. It's essentially the entire executive team. Patty will even come and visit on occasion, as will Jim, no doubt. In addition, we've created a core team for the business technology transformation process, and that core team is focused on kind of the day-to-day oversight of the activities that we've laid out in our vertical value stream. And that team will be meeting weekly and maintaining their own performance metrics and task plans using a Kanban approach. So we're pretty excited. We just started that process this week, and so we'll proceed with that over the course of the next number of years. That core team, just so you know, is led by myself. It includes Eric Decker, Tad Kogan, Stephanie Abram, Greg Moore, our new BTMO director yet to be determined and hired, Mary Faulkner, Trina McGuire-Collier, and as I said, they'll be meeting again in 211 on a weekly basis. And of course, we're always happy to have you come and visit that room and kind of just see what we're doing. We have great full transparency, lots of visual management, and love to have your observations and inputs. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Brian so he can talk a little bit more about the strategy assessment and recommendations and the roadmaps that have been created for that.
All right, thanks, Chris. So at the same time that we did the business technology transformation, value stream mapping, we also took a look at security. So earlier this year, members of the executive team and led by internal audit hired a company to come in and test our security. And they were intended to test our physical security and our cybersecurity and our behavioral security, so three main components. And the long and short of it is, it's called a red team assessment or red team attack. And so we hired them to attack us. And they were very successful on a number of different levels, which is not a good thing, but the good news is we have a very detailed report now on what we can do to plug the gaps. So they were able to get into our network. They were able to get into our facilities, even to the point where they were taking selfies at some of our remote locations of themselves unnoticed. And they were able to get into this building very easily because, as you all may know, and you probably have done it, they noted in their report, we're a very friendly organization, and we tend to hold the door open for people, so it's very easy to walk into the building. So one of the things that we did the same time that we were doing the business technology transformation is looking at all the recommendations from the red team, and we mapped out a roadmap on things that we need to do over the next 18 months to address some of these things. Now, a lot of them are behind the scenes network things that I won't even pretend to understand, but Chris has a list of things that we've immediately plugged. They're really easy programming fixes. It's closing, flipping some electronic switches behind the scenes to actually lock down the system right away. So those things have already been done. We have a number of things that we're going to be doing in the next couple of months to add, especially to the cyber side, which don't involve a lot of purchases of equipment. They involve some programming behind the scenes and some tighter controls on how we have access into and out of our network. We're also going to be looking at a number of changes to our physical security in terms of how we use guards, how we program cameras, and then also we'll be asking employees for help on the behavioral side. So I thought rather than getting into details of which network configurations that we're going to be doing behind the scenes, I might just share a couple of things that everybody can do to help now. So if you were at the section leader meeting, you've heard these, but there are things that you can do immediately to help with some of these things. One is change your password frequently. So does anybody have a guess on what the most common passwords are out there? If you were at the section leader meeting, you can't cheat. Anybody know? Password, that's one. What was yours? Password. Welcome. Welcome one was one way they got in. So that's common not only at Denver Water, but apparently lots of organizations, IT groups use that to set up new employees. If you think you have a really secret one that's called Summer 2017 or Fall 2017, it's not secret. Lots of people have that. Change it now. And 30 people have your password. You're probably thinking, I'm so smart, I just change it with the season. Wrong. It was enlightening to me too. What we're going to be doing is going to passphrases. So as Kevin Long will tell you, when you go to a passphrase, you can type in anything you want in there. So you can say, my favorite person on the executive team is Chris Dermody 2017. And you can put that, and then once you have a passphrase established, in the future, you'll never actually have to change your password. You can have a long passphrase, and that'll work. We have a couple glitches right now. If you're a user of JD Edwards, you can't have passwords longer than 10 characters, so we're working to try to address that. But that's one of the key things you can do is make your password complicated, because the longer your password is, the harder it is to crack. If it's only like 6 characters, a good password person can crack that in 15 or 20 minutes. If it gets to 7 to 8 to 10, it takes hours and days and even longer. And if you make it complicated with capital letters and characters and numbers, it makes it even harder. So that's one thing you can all do now. The other thing, keep your well, of course I'm dressed like an IT guy today, and Chris is not, but keep your badge visible at Denver Water, but not visible outside of Denver Water. So if you're at the grocery store, if you're on a bus, put it in your pocket, put it in your purse, put it in your backpack. You don't need to have it visible. The reason for that is there are RFID readers that can read your badge. So one of the things that the security team that we did hired was hopped on the employee shuttle, sat right next to somebody, and sucked all the information off of their badge and used it to get into the building. Okay, so it's not hard to do this stuff, but what you can do is keep it in your pocket. Then people don't know that you have a Denver Water badge, and they're not going to be coming looking for you. So that's the second thing you can do. It's like common sense stuff that you would do for personal protection if you're out and about, partying in Lodo like you all probably do on the weekends. I don't. I'm too old for that. And then lastly is, two more, tailgating. If you know somebody, it's fine to hold the door open for them. But if you don't know, say something. Say, hey, I'm sorry, I haven't met you before. Can you please use your own badge and not hold the door open and let people in? And that doesn't just count for our facilities, but we periodically do that for contractors who are coming. Somebody shows up at a pump station and says, I'm here to fix the HVAC system. Well, how do I know that you're here to fix the HVAC system? What kind of credentials do you have? And then lastly, if you see something, say something. We need everybody, you hear that when you're at the airport, if you're on a train, if you're on a bus, but it's really important to do that because everybody here, we can have the best security system in the world. We can have the best physical security, the best cyber security, but if the behavioral elements break down, then all that stuff is worthless. So we need everybody's participation on that. So over the course of the next 18 months, we're going to get into lots of details behind the scenes through the value stream. It's downstairs too if you want to go see it, but we really need everybody's help for that. This team is led, it includes Kevin Long, Melissa Hollenbaugh, Prescott Coleman, Mary Price, and myself. So we're the core group that's looking at that. So it's a little bit on the security side, and again, just use your brain and be smart about this, because this is your place of work, your business, and we all need to do our part to protect it too. So that's all I have on that. Any questions for either Chris or me? Yes, sir.
Brian, once we address the security gaps, are we going to rehire this company to come back?
Yes, that's a great question. In fact, we may hire them in pieces to say, okay, we fixed these 5 things, try to break in again, or try to tech us again. So we're going to try to do it mid next year, like a partial test, and then every couple years, yeah, you gotta keep testing it to make sure that it works, because just as our systems evolve, the bad guys keep getting better too. You know, and these are people that were testing us from they're really good. These are the type of people you'd see on TV. They're really, really good, but it's not a nation state either, right? So if you're China or Russia or something like that, they can hire 1,000 people and make it their full-time job to get into an organization if they want. That wasn't even this level of complexity. So you got to keep on it and really keep improving the system, and then yes, keep testing it to make sure that it works. It's a great question. Hopefully this fall. If we fix the one problem with JD Edwards, then we're good to go. I changed mine this week because I don't get into JD Edwards that often, and I can have Charmaine get in there when I need to. So I picked, it's like a 25 character passphrase, and now it's taken me a long time to remember what it is. But I figured, try it right away, you know, and I tried some different capital letters and things, and it's working great. So it's like 20 or 25 characters long, and the passphrase is working very well. Yeah, you can do that right away.
In fact, I'll make mention that just the other day, we converted all of the privileged user accounts, you know, the people who have special privileges in IT in particular. All the privileged user accounts have been converted to minimum of 20 character passphrases as of today. So that level of security has been dialed up already. And as Brian was saying, it can take weeks and weeks and weeks for a strong password hacker to break a passphrase that's that long. So. Well, I've got the mic. Let me make one more comment. This business technology transformation thing that we're embarking on, particularly the workshop that we engaged in at the end of July, I would describe it as really a watershed event, using a bit of a metaphor, I know, but it's really significant. You know, this is a moment in time when Denver Water is changing the way it uses technology, changing the way technology is driven. It was really, really impressive from my perspective to see, you know, the entire executive team essentially in the room, very thoughtfully, very collaboratively working out a roadmap based on some recommendations and our understanding of our business needs in a very collaborative process. It kind of warmed my heart, as it were. And this is a new day, and this is a new process. And I think if we can be successful with this, we'll basically set a standard and serve as a model for others to emulate in the future, because I don't know any other water utilities that operate this way. And so we're going to lead the charge and hopefully continue to advance us in our aspirational goal to be the best utility in the nation. Yes?
So we need to make upgrades to some outlying facilities. Is that coming out of IT's budget?
In terms of security? In terms of sure. So security access, historically has been mixed, both in the IT budget, the IT security budget, as well as in the operations budget, and sometimes it's baked into the capital budget, depending if there's a capital project associated with the work. So I think we'll make the right decisions as to where we budget it, but clearly we have a motivation to make sure we've got the right kind of access controls and security controls in place, along with the right kind of people practices.
Renee, if you have ideas for specific things that you think we need in 2018, let Mary Price know, and we'll figure out the right place to put it, because we're getting all those ideas for security together now.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to be doing the procurement 2P report out here in just a second. I want to apologize. This is going to be interesting because we have no slides the audio video is not working. So what we're going to do is do our best, shy of interpretive dance, to try and portray exactly what happened during this week. So I'll call the team up. I also wanted to mention that we did a 2P, which is typical, not typical for a process type event. And the reason why we did that was because during the VSA, there was a lot of vetting that happened with voice of the customer and things like that. So what we decided to try this time is actually go through a 7 alternatives exercise. And basically what that is identifying different ways to accomplish a particular process. And so the team did a really nice job this week of going through that process. So with that, I'll have them explain what happened.
Hi, everybody. Like Jean said, we're going to do our best without visual accompaniment. If you have any questions, just feel free to bring them up. So this is a 2P event that came out of our procurement value stream. The scope of this event is just phase 1 of the procurement process. So from the time a need is identified until that solicitation goes out to bid. Our team here, we're missing Yua Her and Antoinette Chavez, but I'm Rihanna Galen. This is Renee Hutchinson, Amy Ingram, Jason Kearns, Janine, and Brandon. I was going to say Shaw, but there's so many Janines. Janine Shaw and Brandon Mollis. You don't get to see our awesome pictures, so. Since the list isn't up there, I'll just go down it really quickly. Special thanks to everyone that came in and helped out this week and gave us some feedback. Danny Lopez, Brandon Ransom, Kate Taft, Cindy Brayman, Katie Knoll, Lindsay Scholes, Bob Mahoney, all the IT peeps, the gas line repair crew, Mary Faulkner, Debbie Batt, Greg Moore, Rick Worth, the IT help desk who fixed our printer, and anyone else who may be missed. So our reason for action was that the first phase of this competitive selection process currently has no standard work, results in confusion, excessive handoffs, reviews, defects, and a long lead time. And the scope of this, again, is just phase 1, from the development until advertisement. These are goods and services that require a competitive selection process that are not procured by the engineering or the purchasing team. So in other words, the purchasing team that's issuing purchase orders and not contracts.
All right, I'm going to attempt to show you this because I don't know how else to explain it. So this is our current state. You can see there's a lot of swim lanes. There's a lot of sticky notes on this. It's a very busy process. Currently, right now, there are 32 handoffs, and it takes 36 days to procure. So this is the high-level target state, less sticky notes, as you can see. This is where we want to be, less handoffs, and a quicker turnaround. And then prior to this event, there was an event called the Voice of the Customer, which basically identified requirements, pain points, and all of those are hopefully to be addressed. So phase 1 is addressing like the first part of those requirements.
Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to attempt, even though I know you can't see. So what Jean mentioned, we did what's called the 7 alternatives, and so we came up with 7 alternative ways to accomplish the same thing. And then we basically ranked each of the alternatives using specific criteria that we had predetermined. A lot of those were our metrics. And then from those 7 alternatives, we came up with the best hybrid. We took the best pieces of each of those alternatives and came up with a hybrid method. And so this is our final development phase process map. You can see it's much shorter. There are fewer steps and there are fewer handoffs. We went from 32 to 8 in this ideal state. And one of the things to note, there are 3 flow cells, which I think Jason and Janine will get into a little bit. But one thing to note here is what came from the Voice of the Customer sessions that we held in June was that people really wanted to understand, they wanted to have clear roles and responsibilities for the contract administrator and for the contract specialist, and sort of where that process became owned by procurement. So there's a dotted line here that you can't see, obviously, that shows the handoff between the business and procurement. So this piece here is sort of your business case and your scope of work development process, and then that handoff happens, and then your procurement process starts. And then, like I mentioned, we had talked about defining roles and responsibilities for contract administrators. So we did that. One of the things we came up with was standard work, and we actually came up with sort of a job description for the contract administrator role, and it lays out what the contract administrator is authorized to do, and then their roles and responsibilities and some of the competencies that are required of that role.
And I'd just like to add one thing to that. That's all right. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So with the contract administrator roles and responsibilities, that's going to be an area with a lot of organizational change that's going to be required, because from section to section and division to division, what contract administrators do right now varies a lot. And there's probably going to be it's going to be more like a project manager than just here, pass this paperwork through. So that's a big difference.
All right, thanks. So one of the tools that we developed during this event was our procurement matrix for our internal customers. Some of the feedback we initially got was people aren't aware of the different types of purchasing opportunities we can use when we need to buy something. So we developed a pretty simple, straightforward tool here with risk on the y-axis and dollar amount on the x-axis to show you when you can use a P-card, a purchase order, or a contract based on the dollar amount and on the risk. So there are other dollar amounts that come into play, like board approval or a competitive selection, but we just wanted that straightforward tool before anyone comes to consulting with procurement, that they can access that whenever they need it. Another thing that came out of this event was we developed standard work for the contract specialist and the contract administrator. So we have these two templates here that they document the requirements and the processes that are expected for each of the individuals to carry out through the procurement process. And last thing I have here, as Amy mentioned, one of the key things in reducing our handoffs and cycle time in this first phase of development was implementing these flow cells into our process. So the first flow cell is to define the business case and approve that business case. So the idea behind this flow cell is that you have all of the key stakeholders who are involved in the process in a meeting before you even get to developing the scope of work. So key stakeholders could be the contract administrator, the contract specialist, and then managers if they're required to approve the process, and then also if the project might have impacts on other divisions, like you're buying something that could affect IT, or it might have security impacts as well. You want everybody who might be involved on that project initially in this first business case meeting to have that approved, so you can advance straight to scope of work development with all approvals.
And so we did come up to help with that stakeholder process, a list of questions to help get the gears turning in contract administrators' heads, like, is the public going to see this project? Is this going to need to involve IT in any way? From plugging in things, or it was really, a lot of people don't realize the things that seem obvious in hindsight. I think one, when I was talking to IT folks the other day, was purchasing equipment or furniture for the new building, and how it covered where the IT equipment needed to be plugged in. Like these little things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. So by having the right people in the room and doing these flow cells, the second flow cell is you're really getting those people in a room together, and the contract administrator is running this meeting where you are banging out the scope of work in that meeting. Instead of going back and forth and circulating it a million times, you're just getting in a room and really finishing that. At the end of the meeting, the scope of work would be ready to hand over to the contract specialist. So, and then the third flow cell is really, for those folks who are involved in construction projects or things like that, it's sort of like your pre-construction meeting where you are just reviewing, saying, yes, this is what we agreed upon. You're going through the steps. You're not making changes. It's really saying, everybody, yes, we agree. This is what we're moving forward with. And after that meeting, it should be ready to go out to bid.
All right, it's a little hard to see here, but we built in some process controls into this this process. So we're going to be evaluating how robust those scope works are when they come to us on a weekly basis. Also, we're going to be tracking what kind of defects that we see in there, so we can kind of look at a Pareto and maybe improve templates, maybe improve training, so we can constantly improve this process. Like all good things, we want to make sure that we're measuring our metrics. We kind of spoke about this, but one of the things that I would like to show is that we're going to meet all of our target state goals. And so I'm pretty proud of the team on that. We do believe that some of these quality metrics will take a little bit longer to improve, just because this is a long process. We're talking, 60 to 100 days for these projects to be completed. So it will take a little while for it to improve, but I have faith in the process that we came up with. We do have some completion plan items. As Janine mentioned, one of the most critical paths is showing that new roles and responsibilities with the CA and really developing that training around that and helping out the folks in the organization with that. So that's what's one key point. We had a lot of great insights with this project. We had the gas leak, which was fun and exciting. Yua had some really good feedback. She was proud of the team. We really collaborated and worked together, and we're very thankful for all the folks that we brought in from the outside and getting their feedback, because ultimately the business is our customer, and we want to make sure that we satisfy your needs. And then one of the points that I want to bring out is really the integrity that we're trying to bring in this process, to be as open and transparent as we can be with the organization and with our business partners outside. So I wanted to say thank you for everyone on that. So that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions or comments? Angela?
Yeah, I got asked to participate in the Voice of the Customer, and I just wanted to say, for those of you that weren't there, this team had this entire boardroom full of customers' voices, and I just want to recognize it was really courageous of you to start. You got a ton of feedback, and thank you for asking. It's a huge reduction in steps, and I love the flow cells. Will there be some training and communication to us as to what our new role is in those steps and what those steps are?
Okay. Do you want to touch on this, or you want me?
I can touch on it. So Rihanna mentioned that this is the first phase. There are 4 phases of this. So this is the scope development. There will also be the advertisement, and then evaluation, and then awarding of the contract. And after we get through all of those, or the procurement team does, there's also going to be an event on training. So what we're trying, and this is one thing we struggled with, is what can we roll out now? And we don't want to hold everything up until all of these events are done. But there is going to be some formal training and all of that will be involved. So on the completion plan, at least for this first part, we are hoping to do kind of a see, do, teach, where we're able to walk people through this first time. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So will that happen this fall or this summer, or?
It's scheduled for October.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
conduit, so make sure that you look at the conduit and then you'll be able to see the actual presentation. So feel free to do that. And that's all we have for today, so have a great weekend, everyone.